off we go. So, welcome everyone. Chris is finally back in my life again.
I know it's been a while since we've sat down next to each other, like 2, 3 weeks.
You've had a busy day, you've had a busy life.
Uh,
You got a kid graduating high school,
Oh, yeah, that's
becoming an
exciting.
adult.
I know that's less exciting.
Yeah, and then another one about to start driving. So,
Yep. We're back to harrowing times behind the wheel. I've learned that when I sit in the passenger side of a car now, I'm automatically teaching the driver, regardless of who the driver is.
same thing. Another story that I had, I didn't realize how often I started doing things for other people because, again, with kids, I was riding with someone and we were at Bojangles. If you don't know what Bojangles is, you don't live in the South, but they do chicken biscuits, famous for biscuits. But, anyways, they hand me the drinks, hand me the food, and then I said, hey, can I get some straws? Because I forgot those. Handed me the straw. I took the wrapper off of the straw and handed it next to the dude I was with because we went out to get food. And he stared at me and said, that's the first time I've had a grown man unwrap a straw for me. And I go, yeah, I have to do it for my daughter because my daughter was 2 at the time. Right. So it's crazy how we get in there. But enough about me and Chris. We're out here. We have a very special guest on. His name's Billy and had a long and storied career so far. And I'm quite jealous looking at his bona fides and his background. But Billy, if you want to introduce yourself, we'd love to hear about you, brother.
Sure thing. My name's Billy Rodgers. I'm instructor for the National White Collar Crime Center currently. I was a DEA agent in my former life. Did that for about 24 years and was lucky to get back home on that job to the middle of Pennsylvania where I'm from. But I spent some time in Buffalo, New York, and if you've never been there, it definitely snows. It does have that same reputation, but they know how to get rid of it. They don't cancel school. You just need a snowblower and good people there. Biggest reason I moved back home was starting a family like you guys were talking about. And nobody wants to come visit you in the wintertime when you live in Buffalo and you're not from there. So, like I said, I was lucky enough to get back here to PA and it actually worked out really well for me. It was where I was a probation officer actually before DEA. So I was able to jump right back into the law enforcement community and it was a good time.
I've every DEA agent that I've met, I've always asked them about the show Breaking Bad and how accurate that sort of process goes for money laundering, and then you just end up sitting on giant piles of cash.
So I feel like they must have had a pretty good person sit in on some of those things. I was the meth guy back here in PA, so
I have
I
family
definitely
members that were also meth guys, but for different things.
yeah, don't take that the wrong way, but definitely, unfortunately, once you work one type of drug, and it's just the way the game works, um, the old case begets the new case, and nobody wants to go to prison, so you just end up being the person that continues to keep working that type of crime in your area, and you just end up knowing all the players. So I do think they did a good job with that. Luckily, no one thinks that I'm Hank in my family, but I definitely admire the service or the story. And Better Call Saul, the song is my ringtone on my phone, so I am a fan.
So speaking about your past as a DEA agent, I always love to hear stories, right? So we normally go into our podcast and interviews, and we have a very loose way talking to our guests. So if you could pick, and I know you probably have a ton of them, every person does. I mean, both Chris and I do as well. But if you could pick one or two stories that you love to tell people about about your time in DEA, what do you usually tell them? Because we'd love to hear that.
um, I can think of two off the top of my head that I'll share. Um, I I ended up being a wiretap person. Like that's just kind of once you do one, again, same type of thing. You learn how to do them, uh, and the advantage to doing a case like that is it does encompass all the people in an organization, which is what we were supposed to be doing as a job. Uh, we happened to be listening to one at one point here in PA, and those cases are, you know, labor intensive because they're going around. They're basically happening 24/7 for that period of time. So really didn't need more on my plate, but we ended up having a phone call, and someone told us, hey, there's this tour bus coming through your area from Mexico. You should be able to find it. It's somewhere near this hotel at this exit, which turns out to only be like 5 miles from my house. So me and a buddy go out there and we find the bus. I'm like, wow, they're not lying. This bus is here, and it really is from Mexico. It's not, you know, your Greyhound Trailways bus that we're used to from growing up. So that looks weird to begin with, and it's a, you know, kind of a dive hotel. So people come out, just two guys, and they get in and they drive it away. There's no tourists on this bus. Like, it's completely empty. And it drives into Allentown, and it goes to a warehouse, and then it's in there for hours. And of course we stay there because it's supposed to be full of cocaine. Well, the short story is eventually someone did come and leave in a minivan, a really old kind of broken down van. And you would think, okay, you made it all the way to Allentown from Mexico. You would have some sophisticated movement of the cocaine from here on out. But all they did was put in the cardboard box in the back of the van, and the guy ended up cooperating with the police and let them search it, and we find 400 pounds of cocaine. It had originally been inside of a welded box underneath this bus that no one would ever found. In fact, it had gotten stopped 3 or 4 times before, and no one found it. But I only tell you this story because it ends up coming full circle, because when I first got out of college, I couldn't find a law enforcement job, and I moved down to the Eastern Shore of Virginia with my wife for her first teaching job. And I got my school bus driver's license. So, of course, I decided to volunteer to drive this tour bus, because now we got to store it somewhere, right? It's evidence, basically, for seizure or even just to see what else is inside of it. And lucky for me, I had a state police escort, because I couldn't get the air brake off of the bus. Like, I had to drive this big bus, and it's much bigger than a school bus, and hold this button down that literally is the air brakes. And if I would have known more, I would have punched it down and it would have unlocked the brake. But I had to drive like and put all my pressure I could on this stupid red button, almost like the kill switch, you know, to get rolling. So, you know, the weird things you end up doing in the job that you never thought you would have to do. And then the other story, go ahead.
What does 400 pounds of cocaine look like?
Not as much as you would think, really. But like, you know, of course we grew up in the pound system and not the kilo system, but all you need to think about is like, a kilo is basically 2 pounds, just a little bit over that. If you look at a bag of sugar, that's 5 pounds, but the way it's packaged kind of equals the same kind of shape. So imagine, you know, that many bricks of that sitting on a desk in an office. I got some fun trophy shots from over the years, but that's definitely the biggest seizure that I ever had. That, you know, was a case of mine.
Ew. I've seen this all the time on TV shows, and I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to ask you. Is it common to take a knife and open a substance and then taste it?
No, it is not. It is not. Certainly you take a knife and you open it up to test it, but you don't taste it. You take a little, you know, basically applicator. It looks like a piece of paper, and you put a little bit on the edge, and then you put it inside of a test kit, and you test it that way. But yeah, you definitely don't taste it. Not like the 80s movies that we grew up watching, or TV.
I feel like it could be some type of acid or highly based substance, and then there goes your tongue. You don't want to do that.
I'm glad he gave.
Well,
a
even
good
think about the rise
description.
of fentanyl. All of a sudden, you got this stuff that people were testing, but even in that test environment, the release of some of those chemicals into the air, people's canines got sick, some died. You know, officers ended up in an overdose situation. Definitely, that's why we got to do it the right way.
I'm glad he gave a good description of what 400 pounds looks like, because if you would have asked me, I would have been a 3-day weekend.
What's that other story you got, Billy?
Uh, well, there's a little town by me, and actually a relative just moved near there. So I had met him for lunch last week, and I told him this story. It actually comes full circle to my probation job too. But it's small little town. I bet you there's not maybe, but 500 people in the area of this little town, kind of Main Street, USA. Except it has a railroad that runs right through the middle. Now, when I was a probation officer, there was a person that lived on one side of the tracks, and when I needed police help, they couldn't get to me because of the train. We get to this part with DEA, and I'm back here in the same area, and we had done a controlled delivery of a box of meth that came in the mail, and we had a helicopter to help with surveillance, and I happened to be in the helicopter, which was definitely fun.
What is a controlled delivery for our audience?
So it's essentially where we intercept a package that's coming from somewhere where the source of supply was. In this case, it was a FedEx box. We don't give the bad guy the real stuff. In the end, it depends on what jurisdiction you live in, but in this area, you just have to tape a minuscule amount of the real substance into the box for prosecution. But we already seized the rest of it, right? So they're expecting this box to come. So we get somebody to pretend to be the delivery person, and we bring it to their house. And then once they open it up, and we have ways to determine that, different devices we can use. Then the go sign is, we're going to execute our search warrant and arrest the people who claim the box. So we do that. And I happened to be in the helicopter that day. But I wanted to be there, right? It was my case as soon as the search warrant was made. So the helicopter pilot actually landed the helicopter next to the train tracks while the train was going through. And because of the area, I was on one side of the tracks, the house was on the other. A crowded form, because this is not a place where a helicopter would fly, and certainly not one where it would land. But it was on the other side, so no one could see me. And so helicopter lets me out, takes off and goes. Train's still going for a while. And when it finally cleared, I was able to walk across the tracks and go to the bad guy's house. And the people stood there as I walked across the tracks, and they're like, "Did you get out of that helicopter?" And I was like, no, I didn't. And I just kept walking. So that was fun. I felt like a movie, like I was in a movie that day.
It's like James Bond 007. Like, are you a spy? No, I definitely didn't just drive that Aston Martin here. Like, that wasn't me.
It was me, like Shaggy.
I'm just an analyst, man. All right. So what can you tell us about NW3C? You said it was a white collar crime center. Tell us about their mission, the work they do. What do they support?
Sure. So it's a nonprofit. We train law enforcement all around the country, and even in some cases under contract with different entities overseas. But primarily our focus is to train state, local law enforcement, and even some federal agencies in cybercrime courses. Anything from digital forensics, where you're examining a phone or a computer, to open source intelligence. I teach that as a class. Dark web investigations, crypto investigations. But basically, it's anything that's involving the internet or some type of device that's used to commit crimes, and trying to help law enforcement understand what the next hurdle is that they're going to have to work with in collecting evidence, or even having an investigation.
Because you mentioned that you instruct OSINT, what's one of the things that you would tell someone getting into OSINT, or suggestions? What are things that they should know before they get there, And then what is some advice for breaking into OSINT?
Well, we have a 3-day class that we do on it. I've been lucky to be a part of that and even help develop that. But I think really what you need to think about is how is whatever platform or device going to be used by someone to commit some type of crime. And then you need to interact with all those different platforms yourself so you understand how they work. And with you guys with open source, that these platforms weren't meant for law enforcement to peek into or to look at different things or imagine what data could be helpful for us. Most of the time we teach people all these different avenues are ways to try and identify who the person is, because most of what we're doing with open source is really trying to identify who the person is that did what they did, and they're hiding behind the platform or application in some way to try and be anonymous. And that's what I talk about even when I teach my dark web classes, right? We still have to take people from Tor and all these other platforms back to the real clear internet that we work on every day, and hope that they made a mistake where they blended their real world identity with their pseudo, identity on the internet.
I can imagine that tying that pseudo or that anonymous dark web user to the ClearNet is extremely difficult. What are some techniques that you have developed that you can share that help you or help encourage that connection?
Sure. Well, first, if you're lucky enough to develop the ability or you have the authority to actually communicate with these folks in your own way on these platforms and hopefully convince them to go to a place that's not closed down, that is difficult to investigate. That'd be the greatest thing you could do, is if you have the ability to do active investigations where you're interacting with folks and gathering evidence that way. But most of the stuff that we do is historical, right? If you think about cryptocurrency is a problem now, and that's the currency of the dark web, but also a currency that we see for fraud for pretty much everything, trying to again unmask someone behind a long string of letters and numbers. Most of what we do or what we teach to law enforcement is it's after the fact. The money's already been stolen. We're trying to find a way to get it back or even identify who took it. So historically, again, you're just trying to find that breadcrumb trail that they left when they set up their system, and hope that they don't really have a good operational security on their side, right? They're not protecting themselves well. They've made a mistake somewhere. When we talk about crypto, again, it's lucky for us that people still need their cash. They really still want the real fiat money. So as long as there's a place where we can kind of have a choke point where they do cash out their funds, we have a fighting chance of figuring who they might be.
To representatives from TRM and chain analysis and blockchain intelligence group, there's about a 90% chance that either an investigation for cryptocurrency will begin at an exchange or in an exchange now. Whereas, 13 years ago, when crypto was really taking off, that wasn't the case. It was like somebody on the street who said, "Hey, I'll give you $1 for 10 Bitcoin." So
Right.
it's a lot
But now
easier
it's worth
now.
so much money. They want it, right? They need it. And then as long as it's not legal tender in the US, we're going to be okay. But I don't know if that's going to change. I think that's a strong possibility that there'll be some type of US dollar coin in our future, and that's going to, I think, maybe flip the script a little bit and make it harder for us. If you can go to Wawa or your whatever convenience store you guys go to, Circle K, whatever, and pay for your gas with your Bitcoin, it might be harder for us.
on that note, going to convenience stores and cryptocurrency, what's your opinion on those cryptocurrency kiosks that are there? Because from my personal perspective, I don't think there's any legal reason for those to be there now, right? Because I've heard of older people getting scammed, younger naive people. So just wanted to know your opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I actually got to watch it go down in person. Was teaching a class in Florida with my buddy, and we stayed next to a Circle K. I think it was in Fort Myers, Florida. And I walked over to get a soda. I'm in there. There's a guy at one of the crypto ATMs that's inside the store, and he's shouting into the phone, older gentleman. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm watching this guy get robbed. I mean, I teach the class. Like, this is exactly what, is going on, man. Now, of course, I'm not law enforcement anymore, so I don't have any jurisdiction to, you know, completely intervene like I really want to. So I go up to him. I'm like, sir, and the screen has 15 grand typed in on it. Like I can see. I'm like, oh my God, like I'd be beside myself. I can't afford to lose that kind of money. So I tried to convince him that he was in the middle of a scam. He basically told me to go F myself. And he continued to scream in the phone. And he's like, it's my son. He knows what he's doing. And I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like it's your son, right? You're screaming at him about money. And in the end, I wasn't smart enough. Like my buddy's like, why didn't you pull the plug on the machine? Basically that man got robbed in front of me and I felt like I was powerless to do anything about it. In hindsight, I should have called Fort Myers PE, as we're sitting here talking about it, but like basically I was flabbergasted by the fact that the guy couldn't see the forest for the trees and step back and not do it. But yeah, I don't think there's any legit purpose. There's one in the convenience store around the corner from my house. It had a sign on it the other day that said it was not working. But I mean, what else would you need a machine like that for? If you want to buy crypto, you do it on a platform where the fees are next to nothing. Just think about when you got your first credit card, whatever the percentage was for that. These things are 20+%. Like no one wants to pay that kind of extra money for something they can get, 1-for-1 on Coinbase or Kraken or something like that. So I think they're really only set up for the crime that we're unfortunately dealing with. If you're curious about where they are in your area, you have no idea. There's different apps or different sites on the web. One is called Coin ATM Radar. You can see how many there are around you. And I think there's even been studies that people are starting to see that a lot of these machines are even in communities that have much older adults too, which just seems like they're being set up for being victims in the end.
The ones near me, it's 7-Elevens around here. And I walked up to it one day, and I always check them out. Two things I always do when I either see a crypto ATM or a regular ATM in a convenience store, I always walk up to the card reader and I pull on it or jiggle it as much as I can, because skimmers are a real big problem nowadays, right? Especially in low income and impoverished areas, because it's that's super simple. And the second thing I do is I look to see if it's working, right? And I did that one day, and it said it was out of order, but I think this particular 7-Eleven, and I'm not going to call them out because this is totally conjecture. It said if you have issues with this ATM, talk to the cashier. You can get cryptocurrency from them if you want to. That made me believe the store owners were in on some type of scam as well, right? Because I've never seen that before, where it's like, hey, if you have issues with this machine or you can't get any cryptocurrency from it, you can just go to the cashier and they can get it for you. So that they're probably calling someone and you're giving them your PII, and they're probably getting it over an exchange somewhere and then charging you like a 15% fee for that.
It would be interesting to watch that place and see how that unfolds, right?
That would be an interesting sting operation for local PD for sure.
Even for me, like, teach a Monero, which is a coin you can't trace right now, you know that. And those same websites will tell you what coins you can get from the different ATMs. Again, because of my meth spidey sense, in the last meth case that I did, there's a bar in my area where all those folks hang out. There's an ATM in there you can purchase Monero. I'm like, there's no other reason to buy that other than to buy stuff on the dark web and get your stuff that way instead of the traditional ways that we're used to.
That coin swapping is the only way I can see tracing Monero now. Like they go to exchange, change Bitcoin for Monero. They have a copy of that transaction, but once it leaves their exchange and goes into their wallet, it's gone. You don't know where it went unless they swap the coin later on, and you can trace
Yep.
it through timing of those.
Yeah, and again, you're gonna have to have an active interaction case where you're convincing them to use something else.
What are some recommendations you have to educate the public on a lot of these scams? I mean, coin and cryptocurrency isn't necessarily new at this point, but there's still a lot of people that are scared of it or don't understand it, which I think makes them more susceptible to scams. What are some education opportunities or things that you think people should know about it?
Well, I haven't
least
even
from the
seen,
basics.
of course, because now I get those cards in the mail for AARP, so that's always fun when you reach that stage. But
I'm getting them. Don't worry. You're okay, Billy. You
they
you
have
love you in my eyes every time I see you.
they definitely are putting out training now, which I think is a good thing. I think honestly, the fraud is something that we need to even educate even younger, because of course now even younger and younger kids are getting phones. I even heard an article on the news the other day about younger kids getting credit cards, which seems kind of crazy to me. But as we start to give them basically the keys to drive, financial funds, that needs to all be part of education, right? Even a class in elementary school, to be quite honest, because if they're going to start to use devices, anything that has the vehicle for chatting is a problem, not only for what we're talking about, but the ICAC side, the Internet Crimes Against Children side, like all these things come together in a perfect storm as we start to let younger and younger folks have phones and vehicles to spend money. Venmo, PayPal, all those things. I resisted all those cash applications until I was a volunteer in my son's basketball at high school, and the kids would come from visiting schools, and they all wanted to use Venmo and those types of services to buy the hot dog and the Coke during the game, and we didn't have that set up. But again, the younger and younger kids have that access, so that is why it's so important to teach this fraud. Be prepared for that stuff younger and younger.
I wanted to transfer a sum of money from one bank to another, and I had recently set up this bank account because they allow international transfers. The bank I'm using right now, it's a difficult process. Anyways, I instantly got the money and I initiated the transfer from that bank to my bank. I had to go through a 15-minute questionnaire with the bank on why I'm doing it, what it's going to be used for, how often. So the financial institutions, if they're reputable, are taking it upon themselves to try to protect those that may be a part of a scam. But I do agree with you that there needs to be some education earlier and earlier and earlier to try to make sure that as people age and they go into the digital realm and start downloading these applications, that they know there's no reason for someone to randomly call you and request $15,000. Like that's
right.
Yeah, like you would have
Right.
already had that happen. Like it would have been like a medical procedure. You'd have been involved in some type of donation effort that you've been in for a while. That's just way out there in left field, for sure.
And I mean, even if you think about it, you know from the different things that are out there for us to be part of. Like I'm sure you guys are familiar with Aaron West and the Cryptocurrency Coalition and all this related to the fraud concept. and how we need to try and help all these victims. These organizations are preying on people on social media. They can clearly see you're vulnerable by what you post. You know, you're in a weak moment because you had a family member pass away, a dog pass away, some major life event. So they catch you off guard. You know, smart people make mistakes in a moment because they're busy and click a button, and that link ends up transferring funds from their bank account to something else. I think everybody's got a family member who's got scammed out of something. Hopefully not a lot of money, but just it happens to pretty much everybody. Just like I think everybody can touch somewhere in their family tree someone who's been addicted to drugs, right? Like all these different problems really kind of all blend together, like even mental health. So online is just a vehicle to find people that are easy prey. And a lot of times you find people are victimized more than once too, not just one time, because they are almost on a list for organizations to take advantage of them.
So talking about younger people who are getting scammed, especially some of these romance scams, like what's some advice you would give the parents to be on the lookout for that?
I mean, I feel lucky just to talk about your son just graduated and you got somebody who's just getting ready to drive. Luckily we didn't grow up in the time of having a phone and social media and recording things you end up making mistakes on. There are lots of good people out there kind of spreading the word on how to help your children navigate this stuff. But again, we don't do the greatest job, I think, of talking to our own kids. Just depends on how you were raised, whether your parents were really open with you and talked about all the hard things you're going to face. But communication, I think, is super important. So if you can at least have a relationship where you can talk to your children and you talk about these things, and they're going to be awkward things to talk about, but you got to do it. They'll be happier in the end, even though it'll be uncomfortable for those few minutes you're talking to them. When something does come up and they can come to you and, say, hey, I think this is going on. Can you help me? Easy for me to say, right? I don't have little children now, but someday I'm going to have grandkids, and who knows what's going to happen in the future with all this stuff too, especially if you can basically be tricked, once we have AI and, another Tim can call somebody up and it looks real and everything looks real. And they grab your background because they watched your podcast and it looks like, man, I think that's really him. I mean, that's going to be, I think, the next problem we have, where we don't even know if we're talking to the right person at all.
Just recently, we had a social engineer on our podcast and pen tester. His name is Patrick Laverty. He runs the Layer 8 conference. And he was talking about how people are now using voice samples, right? They could have an 8-second sample and then pretty much generate a person's voice. And that's why I had to go, and I don't know, Chris, if you started doing it yet, but I've opted out all those voice matches where it's like, hey, you call in, we hear your voice, we instantly authenticate you, and now you're ready to go. I had to opt out of all of that.
Yeah. Yep. That's where you wonder if those trick calls that only last for a couple seconds and there's nobody on the other line, is that just someone recording your voice,
Tim has a few phrases that he says all the time, but not while we're recording. And so if those aren't sprinkled in, I'll know it's not him.
That's good. That's good.
So this next one, I know that you've been a part of these cases before, and it's usually a difficult topic to talk about. But regarding, child sexual abuse material and having online content, I always like to get people's take on what different localities and governments can best do to try to prevent that from happening, even if it's just something as simple as education. What's something that governments can do to try to prevent child sexual abuse content and also human trafficking from occurring in their district?
Well, first of all, is not pretending there's not a problem, right? It's everywhere. Um, so don't put your head in the sand that your jurisdiction's unique. Um, I think we need to devote more resources to it too, because the numbers have only gone up. If you look at the stats you can get from NCMEC, especially once COVID hit and everybody was on the computer all day long, every day, you can see that the amount of people in that type of activity has increased. Um, and in this age of sort of deciding where funding is going to go, we definitely don't want to cut these types of programs and the resources for law enforcement to learn how to investigate them. Um, but it seems that is a problem right now. Funding is definitely an issue for everyone. But again, I think it's all, again, even educating lawmakers, right? Everybody, not everybody's been touched by these types of crimes. So again, not that you turn a blind eye to it, but if you're not aware, and you're not shown how big a problem this is, sometimes that's half the battle. But even from, I learned so much since I left DEA. I didn't work ICAC cases. And while we worried about finding that type of evidence on phones and computers, I can honestly say in the 24 years that I was with DEA, we didn't come across that. But also, we didn't do a good enough job at looking at some of those devices, right? We only had one lab for DEA for forensics in the whole country. So they were overwhelmed with devices. So there's no way they could have looked at all those different things. Even teaching law enforcement now, I tell the students, I'm like, you have to be, unfortunately, a master at so many different things, right? It's no longer just knowing motor vehicle code and, the crimes code and knowing how to talk to people, to get information from them, how to de-escalate things when you're involved in a heated situation. Now you have to deal with a phone and a computer, understand how all those things work, how there can be bits and pieces of data in there that will help you solve the crime. It might not all be criminal related, right? The information on that phone or that computer, but it puts the pieces of the puzzle together. And then take all that stuff and actually be able to present it in court. Take it so that, number one, no one believes that you interjected bad evidence into it, all those different things. So I think there's a long way to go around and basically say that educating people and asking for the proper funding for these types of cases needs to continue on. I know Raven's doing a great job at trying to get more federal funds for all those programs around the country. But they still got to do a lot of work to get that.
When you're doing those types of investigations, what are some of the methods and practices you use to safeguard information and maintain chain of custody?
Well, I know, at least from teaching OSINT and the other classes related to it, crypto and dark web, we stress so much about making sure you have a way to document what you've seen and sort of the method that you took to get to where you are. Because if anybody spent any time on the computer doing research, you very easily lose your way, right? I don't know about you guys, but I usually have at least 50 tabs open at once. And I'm like, oh, okay, which one was the tab that had what I really want to see now? Because I found this over here, but I need to know where it relates to what I just saw 15 minutes ago. So even if it's just basic screenshotting, which can be super tedious and easily, again, if you don't have a good flow, of capturing date and time, at least on the screen. You will lose your way quickly. I always talk about Hunchly. I love that tool as a way to capture all that, but there's lots of other ones too. Forensic OSINT, all kinds of different Chrome extensions, even though I know Chrome comes with its own issues because they capture everything about you too. So we don't like that, but having some type of workflow is super important, and we talk about that all the time.
We'll say I'm not paid by these people, but I love their software. Brave is a good Chromium-based browser that, from my perspective, other than the ads and cryptocurrency and VPN they try to sell you, they do a pretty good job of protecting your privacy while transiting websites. But extensions have their own unique things you have to pay attention to as well. You never know what data they're collecting because you're installing a third-party extension. But Brave is one that I would recommend. I don't know how much exposure you have to it.
I have some. In fact, I think you even earn some crypto if you use Brave. So I have the application on my computer, and I go to it from time to time. And I think they have a VPN now that you can deploy, and I talk about those all the time too. I use Proton because I'm cheap, and I'm only doing this for class and not for real anymore. But there are lots of those. Even Firefox now has that VPN, so using regular old Chrome is probably not the best method, but unfortunately they do have so many extensions that are useful. So that's why I still kind of promote it.
So speaking of the training and being in a community, what are some groups that you recommend that people try to be a part of? I know LinkedIn has kind of exploded in the last few years for the OSINT community. But what are some that you recommend people get involved in or start paying attention to, or even, some people that are heavy into OSINT and are talking about it all the time?
Sure. Well, there's lots of folks that I follow. I was lucky enough to take a class actually when I was still with DEA from Kirby Plessis. And she was the first person that really ever kind of, for me, put a word to what we did, right? We were always trying to find people and identify them because usually drug dealers were just known by a nickname and a phone number. So we were using all kinds of different platforms that we had access to try and ID people beyond just subpoenaing a phone. So I definitely continue to follow her. Ritu Gill, RITUGIL. She's spoken at OsmosisCon many times. And has her own forensic tool, forensic OSINT, that has a Chrome extension. She was, I believe, a former Canadian Mountie, but she's a good one to follow. OSINT Combine. I love the What's My Name.app tool, and anything that they put out, I think is worth following. Ray Baker's book is definitely a good book that everyone who's involved in OSINT should read. Deep dive, especially with these times. Very interesting on maritime OSINT, following ships and all the cloaking. So I would recommend following her. But you're right, LinkedIn is the place to go. Anybody that's involved in the OSINT community is very generous in showing what they're putting together. Micah Hoffman, and even Intel Techniques, Michael Bazell. All those things are, I think if someone's just starting out, they should take a look at. Bellingcat. Like, basically, you got to love puzzles, right? You gotta be a person who wants to figure out why these different things are connected. And if you're into that, I think you can be successful.
Know when it's going to be published and if I'm actually going to be quoted in it. But one of the things I always say is if you want to become a good analyst of any sort, there are three things you always have to have. First one is you got to be curious. You always want to look for stuff. Yep. Independently motivated. And then the final one is, just be a part of a community, because we can't do this by ourselves. We can't learn everything all at once. So you hit it right on top of the head, Billy.
Yeah, 100%. You can't be in law enforcement or any of these sort of law enforcement adjacent type roles with open source without friends. I mean, even stuff I've learned from you. You know, I was not a dark web expert by any means, and I still am learning all the time where to find stuff and how to then share that with students on how to get to something they knew nothing about. And if I can learn it after retiring, 5 years now, anybody can, right? You again have to just be part of the community, and learn from people and not be afraid to ask for help.
Huge. Don't be afraid.
So I thought Tim was going to ask this just because he's a dark web nerd. What are some starting points to get to the dark web, and where are some places you should go in your first venture?
Well, the Tor browsers, where everybody has to start. And I spend actually a lot of time on the actual Tor project site itself, just to show people how much information is being told to you that, we're so used to downloading an application or an app, and we just think, oh, we know. So we're going to dive right in and try and swim and tread water. But really, that whole website spells out for you how it works, the inner workings of it, looking at IP addresses, nodes, relays, all that stuff. And so I spend a lot of time actually spending in the settings on that first sort of venture with new students. So, and I think that's how I've kind of put it together in my head, how it works. And then really, that's then when you got to turn on your investigative mind and go, okay, well, how can I use this to my advantage? How do I take this information and what's it going to give me? So I think that's the first place. And then even just using different applications like Telegram and all those places where people are talking about it. And then the number one resource I tell everyone that they need to be part of is Reddit. Following these key terms, these keywords, these platforms on Reddit, those are the people who are using these things every day. Those are the people that tell you that the site is broken or if there's an exploit. And they're all users, right? So even your OSINT skills, you can figure out who those people really are. Can you trust them? Because, of course, you can't trust everything that's on the web, obviously, without verifying some stuff. So for me, it's the good practice of figuring that part out, too. But Reddit's definitely my go-to for what is actually happening on Tor, on Freenet, I2P, dark markets, all those different topics. I mean, even if I wish I would have been smarter in the old career, because I just look up the word meth and see what people are talking about on there,
It's speaking about de-anonymizing people on the dark web, you'd be shocked and amazed that once you finally learn how to use PGP effectively, how many of them use Hotmail, Live, Yahoo, Gmail addresses. And that's a simple, request to any of those guys for that info, and they'll give it to you in a heartbeat. Well, not a heartbeat. You might have to wait a few weeks, but you'll get it. It's
sure,
insane.
You'll still get it though. Yep. Yeah, I teach folks how to use PGP, and we try and send messages to each other. Really just talk about it like the old school when you're in middle school and your friend passed a note to you, right? And maybe you had a secret code on what words meant. Talk about Ralphie from The Christmas Story. He waited all that time for his decoder ring, and he only found out that the message was drink more Ovaltine, as an analogy on how this works, right? Because it's just a bunch of gobbledygook in a long string of letters and numbers. But how important it is, and you have to be able to understand and use it. And now most of the marketplaces even make you have a PGP key to even get on. So we do that in class.
Pretty good privacy. Asymmetric encryption for audiences. We've talked about it before.
Just because I love words, gobbledygook means too much technical jargon to make sense.
That's right.
And then for some of us, looking up meth just meant going to our neighbor's house when we were growing up. Okay. All right. I I'll bring this up briefly, but I won't beat you up on it. So you
Well,
went to
go
Penn.
for it, man.
No, no,
It's
no.
all open.
You went to Penn State, and Alabama just completely dominates Penn State in football across the series.
Yep.
You lost a lot of games there. Uh,
Yep.
are you familiar? Because I found this little piece. There's some bus lore where like if you get hit by a certain bus line, you get a 4.0 in free tuition.
If you get hit by the loop,
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
what you're talking about? The
yeah.
bus on campus?
Where did that come from, man?
Well, it is a bus that transverses all the way around campus and it's free for students. We definitely used it. I don't remember anyone getting hit by it, at least while I was there. But I'm sure in the day of lawsuits, you would get your tuition free. I know that you know during some important wins, uh, people tried to flip the bus. I don't think it actually happened. But I did watch the goalpost get drugged down the main drag, College Avenue at Penn State, after a beat down of Notre Dame. We
They
won
deserve
that
it.
game. So yeah, yep,
If
for sure.
if if none of your friends got hit by the bus, you weren't trying hard enough. Uh, what what's your favorite record, man?
Oh well, I'm a Tom Petty nerd. I love him. Long After Dark is my favorite album of all time. I actually have it signed up above here. You can't really see it real well. Maybe can move it up there. But I'm super into him, and if you take any of my classes, there's always a hidden Easter egg of Tom Petty somewhere. Um, but I am a fan of all kinds of music, and I've gotten into collecting vinyl. I even have a reel to reel that I bought off of Facebook back there, and it actually has some Tom Petty on it that somebody actually recorded. Like you can't buy that stuff.
Nice.
But yeah,
Do you also play those instruments?
I actually made this guitar behind me. Martin Guitar happens to be in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is just about 30 minutes north of me. And the community college had a program where you could build a guitar from scratch. I can't play it worth a damn yet, but it's mine. I made it. So that's my retirement goal. I actually have the goal of traveling for work and busking in the airport so I can pay for my beer. So that's my goal.
I got access to a guitar in Afghanistan, and I learned how to play the theme song from Beverly Hills Cop. So I would just
Cool.
walk around the office just playing that, dun, 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 just doing everything.
That's awesome.
Really. One of the things we always end our interviews with and our conversations is we always wanted to be about you, right? That's why we're on here. We wanted to spotlight you. So we'd love to hear about what you got going on, any trips you have planned, any training events that people could probably sign up for that you may be putting on in W3C, whatever you want to talk about, brother. This is your
Sure.
time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Unfortunately, if you're not in law enforcement, you can't tap into our courses. So I'm sorry for that. But every once in a while, we do have contracts that we do privately for different entities. So if you're interested, take a look at nw3c.org and see if you can connect, and we can figure that part out potentially. But we are primarily a grant-focused state and local training agency. Uh, I just finished up the National Cybercrime Conference up in Massachusetts. That's always a good time. If you haven't been to that and you have the ability to attend that, I definitely recommend it. I also look forward to every October where I've been lucky enough to go to the Northwest ICAC Conference. So that'll be coming up. I think it's at the end of September this year. So it's a great way to see that part of the country. Personally, I'm trying to actually learn how to play that guitar. I've started to learn how to play breakdown on it. I will not do that to you because that's not going to sound good today. But that's personally where I'm at right now with that. Luckily, my kids are a little bit older, so they're kind of spread all around the Northeast now. So I I spend a lot of time trying to go see them on a personal level and spend time with them. I really don't know where I'm going to end up completely, for places to live, but you want to be in your family. So I've always been lucky enough to do that. So I don't have any plans for like this big move for retirement yet. I still got a son in college, so I gotta pay those tuition bills. So that's why I'm working. But beyond that, hopefully you can catch me on LinkedIn. I try and promote what the community puts out there for OSINT 2, because I know not everybody's connected, even though we're all 6 degrees of separation, like Kevin Bacon. In the end, the more you share what you've been given by folks who've helped you get where you are, I think it's better for everybody. So I try and do that. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to share those items with you too. And if I can help anybody with cases or anything related to open source, I'm more than happy to, and we'd be more than happy to come to an area and present if I could too. There's lots of conferences out there I would like to be a part of.
And I would love to audit any class you want to give us. Like we'll happily take it for free.
Awesome.
Billy, thanks so much for coming on, man. Chris, any final parting thoughts?
No, I just thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being willing to share stories, and thank you for being good at what you do, man.
Thanks for putting out what you guys do. I've been a fan since you started, and I look forward to your podcasts and share with folks too as another resource, because you guys are doing it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, we recently started. We have an honorary member. Full member now. I mean, as much as he's been helping us, we actually have a journalist who supports us now who gets interviews for our blog. So if you ever want to contribute a piece to our website, let us know. We'll be more than happy to host it for you for free. So, but everybody else, thank you for listening. If you like this content, please share, subscribe if you can, and like, and comment down below for anything that you happen to like or want us to talk about in the future. But this has been the OSINT Output with Chris and Tim.
Tim and Chris.
And Billy. See you guys, man.
Thanks, guys.